Hello, everybody. Can you guys all hear me back there? Okay, perfect. Well, thank you for coming to Candidates Night. My name is Sandy Malin, and I'm your MC today, and I'm representing the nominating committee with Craig Climo and Dick Collier. I don't believe he's here tonight. So welcome and thank you. The diversity of our small committee allowed us to talk with possible nominees with varying interests, experiences, and ideas. After a broad search with possible candidate responses of maybe next year, no, and our favorite, hell no, we are proud to announce that we have two very qualified candidates running for 2 3-year terms on the board of directors. Before we do the formal introductions, I'd like to take the opportunity to acknowledge past board members that are here, current board members that are here, along with our general manager, and we have Barry and Mike on Channel 7. So if all the past and current board members could just stand up so we can thank you for all the hard work you've done. Oh, Ron Trimble, you can sit down. Oh, Jay Knowles, you don't have to stand up either. I do want to mention that just recently I ran into Bill Hagan, another past board member at the Sports Lounge, and he proudly announced that he was looking forward to his 100th birthday next year. So we're still happy to see him around. And I also had the opportunity to have lunch with Jackie Baxter. And a lot of you might not know Jackie, but she was a board member years ago and has since moved away. And I was talking about what was going on with the upcoming election, and she told me something interesting. She said when she was on the board, she never mentioned the lack of women on the board. What she did mention is when she was on the board, she was the only golfer on the board. So things have kind of changed a little bit. So tonight, you're going to have the opportunity to meet and ask questions of both candidates. These two candidates have varying backgrounds and interests here at LOP. The one thing they both have in common is their willingness to donate their time and effort to keep LOP the wonderful community it is today. And I'm told I should keep this casual and just use first names, and then that way I don't have to pronounce Ross's last name. But I'd like to introduce Robin Rollins and Ross Tomakian. Did I do that right? Oh, I'm still wrong? Okay, sorry. So. Okay, so our format is the candidates will get an opportunity to introduce themselves today. The nominating committee came up with 3 questions that the candidates have had in advance. So they've had an opportunity to prepare their answers for that. And then as you walked in, there were index cards. And you can write your questions on the index card and hand them to Donna here. She will sort through them so we don't have duplicate questions. And then we will continue to ask those, and then we'll have an opportunity for closing statements. So are we ready? So Robin is going to start us off with her opening statement and introduction.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. It is really nice to be here. I thought I'd give you a little background on who I am and how I came to be at Lake of the Pines. I purchased a second home in Lake of the Pines in 1991, and then the lady behind me asked me quite candidly, what on earth are you doing here with all these old people? I said, well, I'm actually preparing for my retirement. In 2016, when my husband and I were both retired, we actually moved up here full time. And since then, it's been an incredible experience. We both love living in this community. It's changed a lot from '91 when I first moved here, but we absolutely love it. So it's just such a wonderful place, and part of why I'm here is because I want to support that and I want to continue that. Let me give you a little of my professional background, because that, I think, plays into what I think will be useful on the board. I worked at Hewlett-Packard for over 26 years, and most of my jobs were in management, in customer support. So my responsibilities really had to do with ensuring that customers were satisfied with the products and the service they got from the support organization. Typically, I had to implement processes, I had to work with other people to make improvements, and generally what I had were customers' feedback, I had survey data, I had metrics, and I had to use all of this to try to figure out how do I make improvements in what we're delivering to our customer with no additional money, or in some cases, less money. So it took a lot of being open-minded, collaboration. It took a lot of work to do what I did on a daily basis. So I think that some of those skills will probably translate well to working on the board. So the one thing I want to tell you as far as recently is that I have been working on the Yacht Lounge Committee. So that was my first step into sort of understanding what all was happening at the lake. And I've been on that committee for about 11 months. And then I've started at least attending some of the committee meetings so I could see kind of how things were working. And I still feel like I'm a bit of a newbie, but when I was approached about the board, I thought, well, maybe now is the time. So I decided to throw my hat in the ring and say, okay, let's see if there's some way that I can help keep this community as fabulous as it is.
Thank you, Robin. Ross?
Well, thank you, Robin. I think you'd make a great board member. You got my vote. I guess, I know many of you in the room here, and I guess that's comfortable and makes it nice. The bad news about that and being, sitting up here is that I probably can't lie about too much and puff up my experience because you'd all catch me in it. So I'll try to be pretty straightforward and honest to you here. So for those who don't know me and those who only know me a little bit, my name's Ross Tokmakian. It's that extra K that gets missed. But anyway, thank you for showing up. Appreciate your attendance here and interest in listening to us. My wife Dana and I moved here to LOP in 2011. That was after I retired from 25 years or so in the consulting industry. The last role I had, I was a partner with Accenture. I was doing strategy consulting, which is really mostly around long-range planning for major corporations, energy and utility companies, so the PG&Es and Chevrons of the world. What we were looking for up here really was exactly this type of community. As opposed to a lot of people, we didn't have friends that were up here. We were just looking around for this community, and we were looking for kind of a, quote, retirement community, but we certainly didn't want a kind of a retirement community with a lot of old people, as you referred to. So, we found this. It was a very outdoor-oriented community, something my wife and I do a lot of things outdoors together. There was a very active group of people, both young and old. There's really a very diverse group of people, socioeconomic kind of backgrounds here, which is delightful. So we've found this, and we've enjoyed every moment, since joining here. We've just been absolutely delighted. I mean, you look out here. I mean, who couldn't be? We're just always amazed that this place isn't just completely overrun with people trying to get in. So why join the board of directors? I think it's really a way that I can have the most positive impact on the community by applying both my professional experience in strategic planning and working with major corporations, as well as applying all the work I've done on committees around here, where I've been actively involved with committees and service groups, basically always keeping an eye out to the future. What are we going to do? How are we going to make it even a better place than it already is? I've been active in the sailing school. I'm currently lead instructor and the I can't remember what we're calling it now, Jim, the co-leaders, the co-representatives on it. In terms of that going, my other major role right now is I'm the chairman of the finance committee, and as I'll talk about in a minute, we're hot and heavily involved in the long-range planning process as well as the monthly financial process as well. You know, in these roles, here and elsewhere, I've seen a lot of, let's just call them spirited debates around, quite frankly, often uninformed positions. You know, and I've always tried, and those of you who know me, I've always tried to get more and better information out there to people to help with this. And I've kind of got a philosophy about this, which is, you know, better to have informed debates than emotional arguments around sort of specialized interests. And, you know, in getting to this, it's a lot more than just saying we're having open meetings and discussions. There's really a lot of work behind getting that information together and then presenting it in a way that people understand it. Because oftentimes I've found the reason there's such violent debate is because there's not enough information out there, understanding for people to make decisions. And, you know, we're having a meeting, for instance, this Wednesday where we're talking about the long-range plan. And that's what a lot of that meeting is for, is to get that information out there. It's a working session, but the community's invited. The board, the finance committee, and the long-range planning committee are all going to be there. And, you know, at least my part of that objective is to get that information out from a financial side, you know, start representing what the costs are, because there's a lot of interest and desires around the community, and the one constraint is really the cost of doing things. You know, Lincoln said it years ago, at least supposedly he said it. He said, if given the truth, the people can be depended upon to meet any national crisis. The great point is to bring them real facts and beer. Well, the facts speak for themselves, and the beer part, well, you know, maybe that was just a metaphor for, you know, more person-to-person kind of communication rather than just throwing, you know, hand grenades over the wall. So hopefully we can get that and, you know, get that conversation going. The long-range plan, it's been something I've wanted to see happen for a long time, and I'm very involved with now, so I'm delighted that it's going forward now. We've been told by our consultants that we're probably kind of at the leading edge of doing this right and doing a lot more than a lot of communities do. So I commend everybody that's involved with that effort right now, and for the community for supporting it. And it's really a combination of what we want to be as a community, not just our next project off the line, but what we want to be long-term with the financials and what it's going to take to get there, as well as we've got some financial issues we'll talk about maybe a little bit later in dealing with and what we have to mount as we go forward. So, you know, my primary goal, as I noted in my write-up there, is really to maintain our assets and keep our community financially strong and, you know, enhance the community beyond that as best we can and we can afford to. So thank you for coming again, and appreciate your all's support.
Thank you, Ross. Craig, I think we've got some good candidates here.
I hope so. I certainly believe it too.
So we're going to start the question portion of it, and we're going to alternate. And since Robin started, we get to hear from Ross again. He'll be answering the question first, and then Robin will do the next one. So they're going to be kind of, because there's only two of them, they're going to be talking back to back, but it's only fair that they don't always have to go first. Are you guys okay with that? Okay. Okay, so the first question, and this is from the nominating committee, and this one's for, well, both of you, but Ross, you'll answer first. Identify one area which is currently performing to your satisfaction and identify how you would sustain the success.
You know, when I think about Lake of the Pines, and I mentioned this early on, it's what's really working well is that there's just such a strong sense of community, and it's really around, I think, what I like to say is really a well-run operation. I mean, thanks to, you know, John and the staff and people, they're working really hard to keep this place as nice as it is and keep it financially strong. And we've heard from the Finance Committee and others many times, you know, thank heavens for where we are financially, because we're actually in very good shape. And we can do things. The long-range planning consultant said to us, gosh, you guys can do more things over the course of the next several years than I imagined you could have. So you actually are doing quite well. But I think to preserve this, and when I say this in the community, it's the amenities, it's safety and security, it's an attractive, physically attractive community we can all be proud of. And I think it's also an issue of fairness and belonging, so people don't feel like they're an isolated part and don't feel part of the community. And all of that really is just to have a fair and open and balanced approach to everything we do on the board, the decisions that are being made, and that people don't get the feeling that certain things are being ramrodded and crammed down them that they are not really all that interested in, and it's one special interest or another that's always the winning interest. So the more open we are about sharing information and the more fact-based we are, I think the better off we'll be.
Thank you. Robin?
I have to follow that. Just kidding. Yeah, it's interesting, you were talking about the Long Range Planning Committee, and when I was thinking about this question, the one thing I thought was an incredible step forward was the putting together the Long Range Planning Committee, the collection of the feedback, and it wasn't just a singular, let's talk to a few people. There was the survey, the town halls, the workshops, and it was the first time I felt like we had kind of a big picture of what the community was saying was important. And with that, it also gives really, a framework for how do we keep these assets and amenities viable for the long term. And this long-range plan to me, has been needed for years. I mean, like I said, I've been here since '91, and I don't ever recall having anything like this in place. And I think it's incredibly important, and I think the work they're doing is incredibly important. So what I want to do is make sure that I do whatever I can to support that long-range plan. We don't want to be short-sighted. We don't want to be reactionary. We don't want to just listen to the vocal few in making our decisions, and especially when it comes to spending our money. All I have to say.
Thank you, Robin. Okay, second question from the committee. Identify one area that is currently underperforming and indicate what you would do to bring about improvement. And Robin, you get to start.
That's mine. Again, when I was thinking about this, I think the one area that I see really has to do with transparency and communication within the community. There is so much misinformation. I think this speaks to some of what you're talking about. It is amazing to me how much misinformation is rampant in the community. And a lot of it is just by people not having the right information, not being in the know, not being aware. So I think there's a lot of things we can do to improve the communication. I know a lot of people use the website. It can be incredibly difficult to navigate. I think there's other things that the committees could do. For example, one thought I had is maybe the committees need to periodically put out a short overview and an update on the status, recent decisions, or recent recommendations. What are the next steps and when are they due? We need to make the information accurate and timely and accessible, and most of all, understandable. I read through the minutes of the committees, and I got to tell you, it's like I have to go back a year just to try to understand how they've gotten to where they are today. So I think people are busy with their lives, and I'd like to see where the information is, where they can actually digest it and understand it, and I'm hoping that will reduce some of the miscommunications and the misunderstandings and some of the reactions that we get to some of the work that's being done today.
Thank you, Robin. Ross, do you want me to read it again?
I think I got it.
Got it.
Thank you. I guess sitting on the Finance Committee, I have not necessarily better, but certainly regular access to what's going on in the community now for the past several years. And we are really struggling, I think, to get, let's just say, the right balance in food and beverage. And it's not just where we have it, but it's the level of service, it's the size of the subsidy, it's the facilities utilization. I think it's that whole picture. And I know Jim just raised a trial balloon on that, and someone said this trial balloon was made out of lead, but I don't know. We commend him for, working hard on that one and raising up. And I think it gets back to this point, and it's partly the challenges we're facing right now there is one that we've been anticipating for quite some time, but is now hitting us. And it comes in the form of high labor costs. And we're only starting to see that this year. I mean, as rates continue to go up in minimum wage up to the mandated state levels, every year now we're going to see another $1 increase. And that hits more and more of our staff, because pretty soon the people who are up here are starting to feel like they're at the very bottom of that level, so they're going to get pushed up. And so we're going to see pressure in the expenses. But beyond that, I think we've had a question of how food and beverage works. And we've got a lot of things and a lot of desires for people to improve our amenities in a lot of places. And quite frankly, we're going to have to start balancing where it's going to come from between the capital that's required and the operating costs to keep things going and what our membership fees are. So we need to do a deeper dive, for starter, into food and beverage and some of the numbers. We're having a conversation about that from the Finance Committee side in a week or so, to try to at least better understand what that challenge is and what opportunities they might have. We've got a great staff there, and so we want to try to support it, but then inform ourselves so that the board can make better decisions, more informed decisions about what's going on there. And secondly, we need to provide this information to the community. This gets back to the conversations about what's going on. Is it being shut down? Is it being moved? Is it being opened up? What's happening? There's been no decisions made yet. It was all fait accompli. It was all done and complete. And so I think, with some good information out in front of everybody, I know we've been trying to do that. We need to continue to do that. And hopefully then we can get some good balanced decisions out of that, because I don't think that this is going to be the first challenge we face as costs start to rise with our labor. We have a big low-cost labor force here, so it's going to be affected all the way across. We're having a hard time even staffing all our operations on a regular basis because of just the unemployment situation is so low now, and that creates problems in delivering all our services. So that will be a beginning of many cycles on this, I'm sure.
Thank you. Okay, so Ross, you get the last question from the committee first. What are your top 2 goals you would like to see accomplished over the next 3 years?
Number one, which we haven't really talked about, but was very commonly expressed during the long-range planning processes that we discussed and the meetings that were held, is really successful completion of the lake management, sludge removal, weed management process. We've got a process that's been started now. We don't know exactly how it's going to progress, what's going to happen with that. It's sort of a 3-year timeline between what we're starting to do now and then the final getting various different parts of that in place so that we can get bioswells and things, so maybe we don't have to keep doing this all the time. But this is a path of discovery, quite frankly, and we'd love to all see success there. Success will mean a lot of things. It will mean that the lake's available for more people more of the year. It's cleaner. We don't have to go and have parts of the lake where people are complaining as much about wading into the water and having leeches on their legs. There's parts of the lake, down there at Park 4, up in Shadow Cove, for instance, they're, quite frankly, they're almost unusable parts of the year because of the management. I think we've done a great job. Lake and Parks have done a great job of getting the process started, and hopefully we continue to adapt as we learn from that process. So it's going to take some commitment and attention, and appropriate funding is necessary as we go forward. So we'll have to keep paying a lot of attention to that. So in terms of doing something about it is to just keep that dialogue going. Secondly, as this seems to be getting to be a little bit of a beaten horse here, but successful completion of the long-range plan. And what does successful completion mean? The document is not something that'll be a plan, it's done, we put it down on a table, and it sits on John's wall in his office, and we can all look at that and say, wasn't that a great thing? It's really a cycle. the long-range plan isn't something we write now and it's set in concrete and we move forward. It's going to be a cycle, and we're going to have to pay attention to it. Parts that financial committee is doing right now probably need to be handed over to operations, some of the analytics there, so that committees are not a very good place to house long-term things that go on because of the turnovers. We need to get these things established in places where operations takes and owns it as part of the overall financials. It will become a process where we all have greater insight to what's happening in the community as we look and go forward. And bottom line is, I think it's a great thing if that works right, that will help to support, the community, the maintenance of the community, and the maintenance of our strong financial position.
Thank you.
It's interesting to hear your comments. The first thing I noted that my first priority was really the lake quality improvement and the work that's being done. It is absolutely our biggest asset and part of what makes this community so incredible. And the sediment removal activity, the NTMAX, is a fabulous start, and I think really just making sure that we continue to go through the investigation of the sediment traps, the bioswales, some of the things that they're talking about is really important. It's sometimes easy to feel like you've done a certain amount and then you get sidetracked to something else. And managing the quality of the lake needs to be an ongoing priority. So the second thing that occurred to me when we talked about this was, it kind of ties into the Long Range Planning Committee, is making sure that we're doing everything we can to do what the members say they want and need, and yet still be fiscally responsible. There's a lot of diversity in the community. There's a lot of things people say they want and need, and it's a bit of a balancing act on how you meet the needs and still keep the finances in the shape that they are today. And we're very fortunate because we're in a lot better shape than many HOAs out there. So, I say my primary goal would be to try to represent the members and what they want as much as possible. But I also understand that that also includes a financial responsibility so that we balance what we're able to do so that we're financially viable into the future.
Thank you. You guys doing okay there? Need any water?
No,
Need to stand up,
doing good.
stretch? Okay.
Doing
Robin,
fine.
I'm going to give you a relatively easy one since we've been talking so much.
Okay.
Just more of a clarification. You had mentioned that you worked on the Yacht Lounge committee or ad hoc committee.
Yes.
Have you worked on any other committees, organizations, or activities here at the lake?
It's the one committee I've been actively involved in. As I said, I've attended some of the committees, and again, we've been here a little less than 2 years, so I'm finding my way in. I'm part of the Fire Bells, and I'm getting more involved in Fire Bells activities. And let me think. I'm a participant in a lot of things. I play bocce, and I try to support burger night every night. You'll find me up there every Wednesday. I'm a staple. But again, since we've really only been here full-time, it was very hard part-time to even stay tied into what was happening in the community. If you're only up here for weekends or maybe for a few weeks in the summer, it was very hard. So when we came up here full-time, it was like moving to a new place. So in less than 2 years, most of it's been participation, but the Yacht Lounge was my first dip into the community waters.
Great, thank you. Ross, this one is directed to you. It was emailed to me, so from one of your cronies or something. I don't know what the underlying tone is. It says, do you support the current long-range planning efforts to identify and prioritize major expenditures and to commit to the plan once it's completed? That's a
Tell that was an
mouthful.
email question
That's
because
a
I think
mouthful.
I've answered that question.
That's a mouthful. Do you want to see it?
No, I mean, it's just, do I support? Absolutely. In fact, I've been an advocate for it for as long as I can remember. And so, yeah, we're going through with it. We've got a meeting on Wednesday where we're doing exactly what was just asked there in terms of prioritizing our spending and talking about it. So, absolutely.
Great, thank you. Let's get back to Robin. Now I asked this person to write big, but how would you improve on the enforcement of the CCNRs and standards? There are so many infractions currently, it is hard to justify. This really impacts those who live here and for visitors to our community.
That's a very good question. And I'll be honest, I'm not really in the know about how many infractions there are. I guess that's one piece of information I'd like to have to move forward. And I think then the next question is, why do we have so many infractions? Is it because people don't know, they don't understand, it's inconvenient to follow the rules? And are we doing enough to make sure we're enforcing the rules and the regulations that we have in place? If we're going to have these rules and regulations, then we should be enforcing them. Do I think that every person should have to be accountable if they accidentally drop a piece of paper on the ground for littering? But we have the regulations for a purpose. And if they're meeting the need and they're serving the purpose to keep this community as beautiful as it is, then I think we should be enforcing them. If they're not, if there's something else that we need to do, then we need to look at it and figure out, okay, how do we accomplish what we're trying to accomplish?
Thank you. Same question to you, Ross. Do you want me to read
This
it?
is the perennial question, what are we doing? There's scofflaws out there, there are people cutting the rules and everything else. There's really two components to this question, I think. On the one hand, there's the public safety side of it. So this is the speeding violations, the lake violations, people doing things on the beach that maybe they're not supposed to be doing on the beach, whatever these kinds of things are. And about a year ago, we were really struggling on that side, I know, and I commend the board for approving more funds for public safety and for operations, and John for getting out there and getting people hired so it was fully staffed. So at least they can do a right job. They've got better information in their cars now than they've ever had before. So there's a lot of good information. Plus, they can actually see, I understand now, that they can see literally when they're pulling somebody over and writing a ticket, they can say, geez, this is the 5th ticket you've gotten. And so they're not as likely to just let them off with a warning. So better information for them to do their jobs better has certainly helped, and I think we've seen a lot of improvement on that side, although I haven't seen the exact numbers lately. The EC side of things, EC and ECC, it's challenging, and I think the biggest challenge there is just to ensure consistency in how they follow their policies and what the rules we have in place. Because as soon as you veer off of clarity and consistency, you open it up for somebody to say, yeah, but Smith over there got to do that, so I get to do that, and if I don't get to do that, I'm going to sue you. Well, there's oftentimes reasons for that, but as long as the policies are clear, they're following them very consistently, and understanding why there's exceptions and that those exceptions make sense, I think we'll have some good luck there. Quite frankly, I can't tell you how bad that is and what the issues are. I know a lot of people are saying, well, there's weeds all over the neighborhood. Part of it's just control and management, getting in there and getting people to clean it up. Quite frankly, some of it, you can yell at people all you want, you can't get things done, and you can put liens against their house and nothing ever happens. And that's just a matter of, you're in a community, you do the best you can. But I think it's that consistency, and it's hard with the turnover that we have in our committees. But I think the better things are clear and procedures and practices are there for this EC, the better off it will be.
Great, thank you. Next question, and Ross, you can start with this one. It's regarding the Firewise program we have. Do you know about this program is the first part of the question. And how important is this program to you to support it? FireWise?
So yes, I'm very familiar with the FireWise program, and it's, got multiple components to it, both dealing with the community at large and plans for the community and dealing with fire issues and fire safety, as well as individual home safety and protecting your home and doing there's inspections out there that you can do. In fact, I had one done at my house just recently, and this was one done by Glenn McGuire, whom I'm sure many of you know, who's on FireWise, and invaluable resources there with Glenn. I know specifically, I imagine the others like him, because they can come to your house and they don't say, okay, the paper says you've got to be 5 feet here, clear this back here. He's talking from a perspective of experience and training, working in the fire department for his entire career and as a trainer in the fire department. So he's either had direct experience for what makes a difference and says, yeah, okay, that's all right over there, but really you got to focus on this. Or he's been training in it and hearing lots of stories. And so I would encourage everybody to go and participate in that and get that done, because the weak leaks throughout the neighborhood are the worst thing can happen in a fire. So, it's a great program. I think we need to do all we can to support it and keep our community safe.
Yeah, like Ross, I'm very familiar with FireWise. I happen to know Steve Chandler, and am very familiar with the work they're doing. And what they're doing is wonderful. And the inspections, the work within the community, this idea of partnering with real estate agents to kind of do a certification when a house is being sold. I mean, they're thinking out of the box to make the whole community safer, and I commend them. And they have, as you mentioned, they are very knowledgeable. They know what they're doing, and I absolutely 100% support what they're doing and what they're trying to accomplish in our community. And it's true, you can do everything you can for your house, and if the person next door isn't managing theirs, you're still at risk. So we have to look at it as a community activity.
Thank you. So this next question is a two-part question. Do you think you are capable of putting your personal feelings aside to take an action that is beneficial to the whole community, even if that action might affect your friend or neighbor? Is the first part. And the second part is, secondly, do you agree or disagree that each board member should feel obligated to vote on all board issues rather than abstaining from voting on matters that are uncomfortable?
This is a very good question, especially when I mentioned that, we have some very vocal people in the community. And
She's my neighbor, so I have to watch out.
It's critical to be able, when you're in a position like on the board, that you can put your personal feelings aside. That's not the place for it. If I'm on the board, it is my responsibility to represent the members of this community, irregardless of what I might think. Now, I'll ask for information, data. I want to make sure we're getting the right information. But that's to me is my responsibility. In the corporate world, there were many times that I might have a personal idea, or I think this is the way to go. But in working in a group and trying to figure out the best approach, you have to work together. You have to figure out what's the best path forward. Even if it wasn't your own idea, it is so important. You have to check your ego at the door and figure out how to work together to figure out what's best for the community. The second is actually one I've not really thought about. Should each board member vote? Off the top of my head, I really can't think of a reason to necessarily abstain from a vote. I certainly don't think that my neighbor or my best friend should influence me to abstain if I think it's going to upset them. There are over 2,000 homes in this community, and I know that not all of them are going to agree with what I think or what I say, but again, my responsibility is to represent the community at large, and if that means I have to make a difficult choice in dealing with a friend, that's fine, and if they don't understand my responsibility, then maybe that wasn't the friend I thought they were.
Thank you. Ross?
You know, when I think about the role of the board, and probably half of you in the room, I think, have been on the board at some point, others, you all know this. I mean, the responsibility the board members have is a fiduciary responsibility to take care of this place. That's actually a big responsibility, and it goes well beyond personal friendships and sort of personal feelings about things. So you have to put the personal feelings aside, because you're not taking care of one, you're taking care of, 2,000 members' homes and the associated property. So that's just a no-brainer, and maybe you all have seen me in some of the ways that I've approached problems, but it's typically been that way. On the vote question, it's the same other side of the same coin. Everybody should always vote on everything, with the exception that, if there's a conflict of interest, if you're making a vote on some call about some issue around your own home or something, and there's a clear conflict of interest or something like this, well then, you have to abstain. But that's about, I think, what should limit it. If you're talking about your neighbor's home or a personal friend's home or something else, you've got to vote and try to make the best decision you can based on the facts as they were presented. We're all friends with too many people here to abstain because you have a friend that has a problem. I mean, it just wouldn't work.
I came from Truckee, and every time we would get a summons to sit on a jury, the judge up there would say, you cannot use the excuse that you know somebody, because it's such a small town, everybody knew everybody. So you were always ruling against your friends and neighbors or for them. So we're getting towards the end. If you have more questions, write them down and get to Donna. We have 2 more questions, actually 1.5 questions, because I think this one is geared towards Ross, so I'll start with this one. Is the long-range plan addressing the purchase of additional land to help get rid of boat and trailer storage at the homes? And that's probably for next Wednesday. Maybe you don't want to answer that here.
I'm perfectly comfortable answering it, and the answer is, as far as I know, no, it hasn't come up. Should it come up? Yes, but it hasn't come up as a question. And so, thus far, no, it hasn't been there. Have you seen it or heard? It's the first I've heard this even come up. So pass that one forward to the Long Range Planning Committee, and then they can consider it.
Well, I guess maybe we should take it a step further. Do you think we should be looking to purchase additional land for boat and trailer storage?
I think that the approach that we've taken on the long-range plan is to try to bring things up that the community raised as a whole, and that there was some sort of voice and support for, and some kind of, not consensus, but at least more than a voice of one saying we need to do this. There's a lot of things that we could potentially be talking about that aren't there. So I think to the sense that or anything else was raised enough or in such a way that it said, yeah, this is a real issue that's got an interest and buy-in by the community, then we should look at it. But, if one person says, geez, we need to add this to the list, well, believe me, the list would be not 23, it'd be 223 items that everybody wants to build. So I guess that's how I would approach it if it's got more than a consensus of one interested in doing it.
So, Robin, we'll take out the long-range planning part of it and just ask you if you support looking for additional land for boat and trailer storage.
And I think it's directly related to what Ross said. Part of what the Long Range Planning Committee is trying to do is look at what was most important for the community at large. And I haven't seen the entire list. I'm looking forward to Wednesday, though. And if it didn't bubble up on that, maybe now is not the time where we need to look at this. It might be in the future, or maybe there's an unknown need. But at this point, the Long Range Planning Committee, I think, has done a good job of trying to figure out what is most important at this point. And it is a living document. It may be that it's a critical point in 5 years, but at the moment, unless it's come through in the long-range plan, I think at this point, it's probably not a priority project.
Thank you. Okay, last question, and this is a good question. And the two board members that are leaving this year are Jim Morrill and Paul Murphy. And the question is, and Robin, you're going to start this, what steps will you take before the departing BOD members leave to collect their intellectual information to help you jumpstart fast in your new role?
An excellent question. As you can tell, I like having information. I like to work with good information. So I would probably be, I don't want to say stalking, but doing everything I can to get the time and attention of our the two departing board members. Paul, we still go down to Scotts Valley, which is where he's relocating. I can even follow him down there if I have to pick his brain. Jim, I don't have to go so far, but I would hope that I could get some focus time and learn about their experience, what they found, maybe challenging, what they see that would be good information for me to know going forward. And just really give me a lot of good insight. So I look forward to picking both of their brains as soon as possible.
Thank you. Ross?
Well, Sandy, I agree with you completely. I think it's Sandy, Robin. Let me get the right people I'm talking to here. I'm sorry. I completely agree with you, Robin, that that's a great idea and a way of handing off some information. I don't know if there's ever been anything formal like that. Jim, did you have anything planned to debrief the people on your departure, on your words of wisdom? But
I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to be around.
Just give me your address.
So I guess it's just Paul we have to descend upon. And but I think it's helpful to kind of have that conversation. And I've had conversations with past board members to try to understand things that are going on here. And it's, like I said, there's however many 24 past board members in this room right here. And so I think that it's a very good thing to try to get that information and knowledge, and maybe we both can find Paul before he departs for other parts.
You might be taking a road trip with me.
He must be down in Scotts Valley because he's usually here. So at this point, Craig and I would like to thank Robin and Ross for volunteering to run for the board. We're looking forward to seeing great things out of you. For the rest of us, even though we only have 2 candidates running for 2 positions, we still all have to vote. We have quorums we have to meet. So we're going to be asking you to make sure that when you go to your poker groups and your bunco groups and your book clubs and all your other clubs, golf and tennis and everything else, that you make sure that all your friends and family and everyone in the community knows that they need to fill out that ballot and send it in. I think they really just have to sign it, right? They don't even...
Sign it and send in the outcome.
Just sign it. There's 2 spots for write-in votes, and Jan's going to kill me, but where did he go? Mr. McMahon? No, I'm joking. He doesn't want to be written in. So encourage everyone to send their ballots in. I got mine in the mail today, so if you haven't got them, they are coming. They must be returned by 5 p.m. on June 21st, and then we'll be announcing the results at the membership meeting on June 23rd. So let's everyone give a big hand of applause for these 2. Thank you very much.